Hey YEGnation, we're here in Ward 8 with Ben Henderson. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, thanks for doing this.
Yeah, he's got an office right on White Avenue. That's actually pretty sweet. So, tell us a little bit about yourself, Ben. I know you've been around for a while. A lot of people know your name, but, for our viewers out there, let us know who you are.
Well, I've been on council for about 10 years now, representing this area for all of that time. And before that, my background was in live theatre, so I ran theatre companies for many years, and also worked and trained as a mediator and negotiator. So I've been at it for a while. I ran a couple of times before that, unsuccessfully, to sort of build up name recognition, and then have been happily supported by constituents ever since, which is great. So I'm running again for re-election. Every time it gets a harder decision whether to run again, and you have to go, okay, well, what is it I really want to do? Why am I running again? What are the things? And there was a long list of things that I think I finally have been making progress on, particularly in the last council, because I think the last council was different from the ones that I was on before. And they're about halfway through the work, and I really just want to make sure they get finished, they get implemented. And I'm really scared if I'm not there to push through on them, that they'll fall back to where we were before, which is what's happened with some of those initiatives in the past.
Okay, so actually I'm kind of interested. What are some of those things that you are pushing for?
Well, we finally got some, and I've been wanting this for a long time, and this council gave the green light for me to go ahead with an initiative on public engagement, because I think that was an area where we really needed to up our game in the city. And I wanted us to do it carefully and well, so we got a large group of people together. We put administration together with the public, citizens, to really, and actually involves council as well, to really talk about why we wanted to do public engagement, what it was about, how to do it better, what the real objectives of it were, and created a strategy out of that. So we have that work, and we took our time doing it because I wanted to make sure we got it right this time. And I think it's really good work. The real challenge now is making sure that it actually goes into the culture of the city, because if it just stays on paper, then it will have no meaning, and it'll just become another document that actually doesn't get followed through on. So that's probably the most important thing. I'd also pushed for a long time in a poverty elimination strategy, and with the support of the mayor, the new mayor, who made it into a task force, who actually have that strategy in place. It's time to stop talking on that and start doing though, and again, the implementation piece is really important to me. The Winter City work, which is longer term work, which I actually have, I think, made a lot of progress on over the years, but we've always known that was also a process that was really about changing the way we think about winter in the city, and making sure that actually took, and that it actually gets into the way we think about our city was not going to be an immediate thing. So I want to see that work finished. And then there's work around bike lanes and good pedestrian access that I think we're finally getting some decent infrastructure in the city, and I want to see that push forward. And then some newer work that we really just started on around energy transition and our real commitments around global warming and actually getting GHG reduction in the city. And we've been really good at setting targets, and we've been really bad at meeting them. And I think we really need to up our game on that. I think we finally have the tools to say, and I think the city has to make a choice. We either have to recognize that our targets are not going to be met, which I'm hoping is not the choice, or we have to say, no, these are the real targets we need to do, and get on with actually making the choices that'll get us there, so that we can meet the commitments that were made in Paris. We have to play our part in that, and we have to come to the table. And cities, I think we're recognizing, have a huge role to play. We have a lot of the levers that will help us with GHG reduction and be able to deal with climate change. And that's one of the other things that I've been really focusing on in the last year or so, that I want to be able to really push forward and make sure we make some progress on. So that's the short list.
That's the short list, but there's a longer list.
Yeah.
So actually I'm going to take you back to your first point, and it was talking about engagement. And part of what we're trying to do at YEGnation is get young people involved, make it easy to access information and that sort of thing. So, what have you done in the past, and what are you doing now in the future and looking forward to get young people involved? My feeling is the city's at a very interesting place right now, because I think we're still growing very rapidly, but I think our demographic and the energy and the generation that is really the one that is inheriting the city is raring to go. I think they expect a different kind of city from the one we've had in the past, and I think there's some really exciting but difficult choices that we have to make in terms of that change, to really make sure that we build the next version of the city of Edmonton. And I think we really need the voices of that generation that is already in some ways running the city, and is going to do so more and more, to make sure we build the kind of city that we want for the future. And that there's tension in that, right? There's a challenge in that because for a lot of people are very happy with the city of Edmonton, and change is always sounds worrying and scary when you're happy with what you have. If you're not happy with what you have, change looks good. So, but I think we have to change. I think we have to keep on moving forward. We have to deal with growth in much better ways than we've been doing. I think there's a real desire for the city to shift from the kind of suburban model we've been on to a much more urban kind of form, and I think those are the choices we're making right now, and we really need the voices of the people that I think will be living in that city and running that city to make sure they step up and say, this is what we want, this is what it looks like, this is where we need to go, and that'll make it that much easier to help everybody through that kind of fear of change and move forward. So I think it's really important that next generation of voices get involved in civic choices, even if it doesn't seem that important to them yet. The choices we're making now are the choices that is the city that they're going to run, and I think getting people really heavily involved is really important, and feeling like they're part of it and that we're listening, I think, is also important. The one other thing that I always say to people is everybody gets disenfranchised from the process or disappointed from the process because they go, well, my vote doesn't mean anything. The person that I elect doesn't win, and I think it's missing a piece of the puzzle. We don't know as politicians how you voted, but we do know whether you voted or not. I mean, that's information. We know whether a certain demographic votes or not. So if you want your issues taken care of, you've got to show up. You've got to go out there and be known to vote. And I think that's the piece of the puzzle that people don't understand. It's not necessarily about getting the person you wanted elected. It's about making the people that get elected know that you matter as an electorate. And if you make a choice not to get engaged and not to get involved, it's much harder for us to fight for those issues of the people that are choosing not to come forward and use their vote. It's much easier for me to convince my colleagues, if there's a really active, vibrant group that is prepared to come forward and say, we care, and we care enough, we're going to vote. So it's important for the city in a whole bunch of ways. It's been a challenge for us. It's a challenge not just in our municipal politics. It's maybe a harder challenge about municipal politics because that you tend to see people that feel like they have stakes in property taxes. Everybody has a stake in the property tax, but it may not be direct for everybody. But the kind of city that we want to live in are the kind of decisions we're getting to be able to make right now, and I really do think it's critical for Edmonton to make a set of choices that actually move the city into a different kind of place and a different kind of urban form, and we need that younger voice to make sure we get that right.
You heard the man. October 16th, come out and vote. If you want your voice heard, young people of Edmonton, you got to go out and vote, and you got to make a difference. That's one of the easiest ways to get involved and make a difference, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I guess my next question for you is, we're trying to get more women involved in politics in the community, and the same as with cultural diversity. And we want to see more people of different races, backgrounds, and like ethnicities, incomes, everything like that, right? And so, I mean, what have you done in the past? What are you doing?
Well, it's a frustration for me. We did an awful lot of work in the last council on trying particularly to mentor younger women to get active. I was a mentor for a number of different people, so it was ironic and a huge disappointment when we went in the last council from having virtually, most of the councils I served on have been half women. And we had some bad luck that all of the kind of women who were on council decided not to run. Literally all of them decided not to run at the same time, and only one of them got replaced. And I think that was coincidence more than anything else. I don't know, some people think it's just that there's systemic problems that push women out, but I actually think in this case these were women that had been on council for quite a while and they had done their bit and wanted to be able to move on and retire. It was just really unfortunate they decided to do it all at the same time. And we weren't paying enough attention to make sure that there were good, strong women candidates who were ready to step up. And it just got missed, and as a result we ended up in a situation where we went from having almost half of council to one. And it feels wrong. It just doesn't feel right. It's in a kind of ironic position for me to be here to say that, because here I am, a white guy, arguing that we need more women on council, and that's always a debate. There's things that I still want to finish. There's still things that I think I can be effective finishing. And there's no guarantee, ironically, that if I step down, I'd be replaced by a woman. I would hope that I would be, and that would certainly when I am done, and that'll be the voters' choice whether or not I'm done now or done next time. You know, I'm reading, my hope would be in this ward in particular that it would be a woman that would fill the spot behind me. But the irony is we had a by-election, you know, where there was an opportunity. There were tons of good quality women running up in Ward 12 in the middle, and none of them got elected. So there's no way to guarantee that either. I think the real thing is we have to make sure that strong women are running. We have to give them the experience. We have to give them the encouragement. We have to say, look, you can do this. This is not, you know, the irony of city council is people often ask me, well, what are the qualifications for city council? There aren't any. You know, this is about the only job you can step up with no qualifications whatsoever. So people shouldn't be afraid of doing that. And I think it's the irony is that men tend not to be afraid of it, and we need to let women know that this is something that they're absolutely capable of doing and they should be doing, and we need them to step up. And I think the same goes for diverse communities. I mean, it was a big loss when Amarjeet Sohi left council. He was a really important voice for us. It was a great gain for us that he went to the federal government, where has continued to do that work and has continued to be a great champion for this city. But I think, you know, there's no question that the demographics of council do not necessarily represent the demographics of the city, and it's really important to have those voices. And, you know, Amarjeet's voice was such an important voice to have on council, precisely because he could bring a different experience to the table. And for us to make really good decisions and represent the full diversity of the city in our decision making, I think the best way to do that is to have that diversity represented at council. If it isn't, then I think it's incumbent on the rest of us to spend as much time out with diverse communities to understand what's going on and make sure that voice comes to us in different ways. There are other mechanisms not nearly as good that we can do it with, and I think it's also incumbent on us to go into those diverse communities and really again find the leaders that we can convince into stepping up and putting their name forward and then making sure they have a realistic shot at winning. I mean, it's not just enough to sort of check a mark and go look at all these people we had running. You need to have people that actually are in a position to have enough support or enough connections in the community, enough knowledge in the community that they stand a real chance of winning. So that takes a little bit of time. As I said, I ran twice unsuccessfully to sort of build up that kind of knowledge for myself. Sometimes it's about having that kind of patience, but we can't just go shrug and go, no one's running. I think there is some active role that we have to take in making that happen.
Yeah, we'd love to create the space for more people to come out and participate in the elections. So for lastly, I guess we should try and wrap up a little bit. So if there's any last words you want to say to the YEGnation out there, to our viewers, you know, now's the time.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I would go back and say, get engaged. Make sure that make sure that you get engaged in this election. I think there's some really, really critical choices that are coming up. I really feel like we're at a pivotal point in the city right now, where we have to make decisions about what kind of urban form we want for the city, you know, you may have heard a lot about the infill discussion and how we get more people living in the heart and the core of the city. We can't continue to keep on sprawling out the way we're doing, or we shouldn't keep on sprawling out. But what that city looks like, what kind of city we build in response, I think we have to do with some care and some thought, and really getting people's input on that is really important. And I think this election is about some of those choices. I think how we deal with transportation and transit in particular are also part of that shift, and I would include other choices around active transportation, walking, biking. I think there's an opportunity again to build a different kind of city right now, and it's really important that we get people to come out and speak about that and say what they want and say what kind of city they want in the long term. So I really feel like we're at a kind of pivotal place in our city, and I think that pivot is about building the next version of the city of Edmonton, and I would say it's particularly important for people to engage in that discussion and say, how do we want to get there? What do we want it to look like? We're going to blow through 1 million people probably in the next 5-6 years. We're not a small city anymore. And imagining what that new city looks like, I think, are the choices we're going to be looking at for the next 4 years. And an election is a great opportunity for people to get engaged in that discussion.
Perfect. So guys, advanced voting is going on right now from the 4th to the 13th. Monday, October 16th is the day you can go out and vote. Go to the polls, get your voice heard. Just as Ben said, It's a pleasure meeting you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for doing this.
Yeah, thank you for bringing us out to White Ave on Ward 8. So.
I know, on a beautiful fall day.
Yeah, it's a little brisk, but you know.
It's still, fall's the best time of year as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it's beautiful out in the city.
Yeah, and that's coming from the person who's fought hard for us to deal with winter better. Fall's still my favorite season.
Well, it's been a pleasure meeting you. Everyone at YEGnation, it's Haroon. It's been a pleasure. YEGnation out.